Welcome to part 3 of our Hot Pad project, learning how to hand stitch our binding. So now we're going to proceed with stitching our project together. And you should have already mastered doing your needle threading, tying off your needle, as well as performing a running stitch. I do have other videos that were prerequisites to this to help you with that if needed, but you should have those things mastered before starting this. So if you are blind or visually impaired, what's going to help you to sew this is the tactile border that you created by folding this fabric all the way around this 10-inch square. So where the fabric is folded and folded over the edge, you'll feel the edge of that border coming in toward the 10-inch square, and it forms a square border all the way around. You are going to be sewing right along the edge of this border using a very simple running stitch. We're doing this with small stitches so that it won't show much, and we're using thread that matches. It's a bright red color. And so if my knot doesn't show in my sewing, I'm going to start, just lift up the border here on the corner and go underneath it first, and just start by putting my needle bottom up through. That way my knot doesn't show. And now I'm going to just start by doing some very simple, very small running stitches right along the edge of this border. And you do have a few layers, so it's, take your time. Pull that thread so you know where it last came up, and keep doing just some small little running stitches all the way around. And when you do the small stitches on top and then go down, and don't leave much coming out the back of your point of your needle, that way the stitches will be small on the back as well. And there you go. We're going to continue doing this all the way around the 4 sides. And you can remove the plastic clips as you get to them. And probably a good idea to put them back in your container so you don't lose them, and you can use them again. Now, once you get close to the next corner where you'll feel that diagonal fold, you're going to get your stitch right up close to the corner and have it come through all of those layers. So this is going to be a little tougher. A thimble might be helpful. I tend to just push it up against the table, the back of the eye of my needle against the table, to help it push up through all of those layers because it is very thick. Pull that through, so now you've got the corner of that diagonal. You've brought your needle up through, and then I'm going to put it down through the other side of the diagonal so I can anchor it there, and come back up and continue going down the next side. Again, using our small running stitches. Oh, I should have mentioned these safety pins might get in the way while you're sewing, so you can take out the safety pins now. There are 3 safety pins that we're attaching your project, so take those out and leave those on the side so they don't get, your thread doesn't get caught up in them. Continue with your small stitches. Okay. So for those of you who may be fairly new to hand sewing, one way to hide your tail when you're ready to change out your thread in your needle, after you create the knot in your thread, you can insert your needle between the layers of the fabric and run it so that the needle is going on the inside between your front and back, not showing on either side, and run it down, you know, as the length of the needle, and before you pop it back up through your fabric, pull it through, and then cut the tail. That way, your tail is going to be in between the fabric and you won't see it. So just a little tip. Okay, so I finished sewing all around that one side, around the corner at the diagonal, and started going down the other side. Now you're going to continue doing this for all 4 sides to complete stitching the 4 sides with the small running stitch and anchoring the corners. And then the final step is to sew down these diagonals. To do this, you're simply going to take your threaded needle, and I like to start just underneath the diagonal again so that my knot of my thread won't show. And I'm going to come up through that underneath that diagonal fold. And I'm starting on the inner corner, so closest to the 10-inch square. And if your tail's showing, you can just clip that a little bit. Okay. So now we're just going to do a small little running stitch to connect this diagonal to the other side of your folded border. I'm just going to go down. Now that's very thick, so you're probably just going to do 1 stitch at a time. Put it down, top down through, pull it down. Again, feel your border. Come back up. Go back down. Just do very small stitches. Come back up. And if you come back up and you've missed that diagonal, just pull it back down and go in a little bit more until you feel it come up through that diagonal. And try to stay close to the edge, just like we were on the other parts of the border. Now, again, a thimble could help with this. Sometimes, again, I just use my table and push the eye of the needle so that it pops right through. This is the toughest part just because it's so thick. And you don't really have to go all the way to the point. You can stop when you're pretty close. I'll go do 1 more stitch. And when I come back down through the bottom, now I'm going to tie it off in the back by making my knot and pulling the tail through the center of my fabric again so I can hide that tail. And there you go. You've sewed down that diagonal corner and you've sewed the long edge. You're going to do this for all 4 sides, and when you're done, it will look like this, with all 4 sides sewn down and the diagonals, and on the back you'll feel your little stitches going all the way around. It's a beautiful little hot pad. Now we could go on and do some quilting on the inside of the hot pad. That would be a little bit more advanced, and I will have a different video to show you all that. I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at 978-419-1824. Happy crafting!